The villagers said the mountains swallowed sound. When the wind died and the crickets went silent, you could hear your own heartbeat inside your head. That's why the old dojo was built there, because no one could run from themselves in that kind of silence. Rika hated that silence. He was 22, with strong shoulders and a swordsman's hands, but eyes that never stopped moving. He'd been praised his whole life for talent, fast reflexes, good form, sharp mind. But talent was never his problem. The problem was what happened after someone said, "Now." That was when his hands started to sweat. That was when his thoughts multiplied. That was when his courage quietly walked out of the room. On that evening, the dojo door slid open with a tired wooden sigh. Rika stepped inside, barefoot on the old, cracked boards, the air heavy with incense and dust. Lantern light stretched his shadow across the floor, long and thin, like the truth he'd been avoiding. At the far end of the dojo sat Master Hayato. He was old, but not fragile. His hair was white, tied back in a simple knot, his back straight, his gaze sharp. He sat in Caesar, hands resting lightly on his knees, as if he could sit there for 100 years without moving. Rika bowed, his forehead almost touching the floor. "Master Hayato," he said, voice trying not to tremble, "I want to become stronger." The old man didn't answer. He just watched Rika the way a blacksmith watches metal before deciding where to strike. After a long silence, Hayato spoke. "You are already strong." Rika looked up, surprised. "Then why do I fail?" Hayato's eyes narrowed. "Tell me about the duel." Rika swallowed. Of all things a master could have brought up, he chose that. 3 weeks earlier, Riku had faced another swordsman from a nearby province. The man was slower, older, and less skilled. On paper, Riku should have won easily. But when they bowed, Riku had felt it. The eyes watching, the whispers, the weight of expectation. His father in the crowd, his own mind screaming, "Don't mess this up. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't fail. Don't fail. Don't fail." The match started. He saw an opening. Clear, wide, obvious. He hesitated, just half a breath, just long enough for fear to step in between thought and action. The older swordsman struck. A single, clean hit to Riku's ribs. The match ended quickly. The crowd murmured. His father's eyes fell. Riku smiled like it didn't matter. But it did. Now, in the quiet dojo, Riku stared at the floor. "I knew I could win," he said. "I knew what to do. But when the moment came, I froze. It felt like my body refused to listen." Master Hayato listened in silence. Then he said, "You did not freeze." Riku frowned. "Then what happened?" "You betrayed yourself." The words landed like a punch. "Betrayed myself." Hayato nodded slowly. "You saw the opening. You knew exactly what needed to be done. But instead of acting, you let a weaker voice speak over your decision. That is betrayal." Riku felt anger rise in his chest. "I didn't choose that," he protested. "I was nervous. It just happened." Hayato's gaze hardened. "That is the problem. You live as if weakness happens to you instead of admitting. You allow it. You excuse it. You protect it." Riku wanted to look away, but the old man's eyes wouldn't let him. "You said you want to be stronger," Hayato continued. "But strength is not the number of push-ups you can do. Strength is not your speed with a sword. Strength is this." He touched his chest. "Your ability to asterisk do what you know is right even when every part of you wants to run." Riku's throat tightened. The worst part was that he knew the master was right. "How do I change that?" he asked quietly. "How do I stop betraying myself?" Hayato closed his eyes for a moment, as if deciding something important. "Every true samurai," he said, "lived by one rule that eliminated weakness from their lives. They were not born with discipline. They forged it like steel." Riku leaned forward slightly. "What rule?" Hayato opened his eyes. "A samurai never breaks a decision once it is made in clarity." The dojo suddenly felt smaller. "What does that mean?" Riku asked. Hayato shifted his weight and slowly stood up. For a moment, his age showed in his joints, then disappeared the moment he straightened his back. He walked to the wall, took down a worn wooden sword and tossed it to Riku. Riku caught it clumsily. "It means," Hayato said, "that when your mind is clear and you decide what must be done, that decision becomes law. Your feelings do not get a vote afterward." He walked to the center of the dojo. "Weak men," Hayato continued, "decide something in the morning and renegotiate at night. They promise themselves they will train, then argue with themselves when it is time. They promise to speak the truth, then step back when fear appears. They live in constant negotiation. That is why they never become anything." Riku stared at the master. "And samurai?" he asked. "Samurai decide once," Hayato said, "and then they obey, even when they don't feel like it, especially when they don't feel like it." Riku looked down at the wooden sword in his hands. "Decide once, obey always," he repeated softly. Hayato's voice dropped. "Tell me, Riku, when you saw the opening in the jewel, had you already decided what you would do if you saw such a chance?" Riku hesitated. "No." "Exactly," Hayato said. "You entered battle with intentions, not decisions. Intentions are weak. Decisions, when honored, are unbreakable." Riku felt something crack inside him. For the first time, his failure made sense. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't anxiety attacking him from nowhere. It was structure, or the lack of it. "What do I do now?" he asked. Hayato pointed to the floor. "Now we forge a new rule inside you. You will live as a samurai, even if your rank does not say so yet." He raised a single finger. "Tonight, you will make one decision in clarity. Just one. Small enough that you can keep it. Big enough that it costs you something. And once you decide it, you will not renegotiate. Not with tiredness. Not with excuses. Not with fear." Riku listened carefully. "What kind of decision?" he asked. Hayato's eyes narrowed with a hint of a smile. "Simple. Tomorrow, you will wake before sunrise and come here. You will run the mountain path to the old shrine and back. No matter how you feel, no matter the weather. Decide it now, in this quiet. And then tomorrow, you obey." Riku almost laughed. Just a run? That was it? But somewhere deep down, a quieter part of him understood. It wasn't about the run. It was about the war inside him. He straightened his back. "I will come," he said. "No," Hayato replied. "Say it correctly." Riku swallowed. "I have decided to come before sunrise, run to the shrine and back, and train." The old master nodded. "Good. Now understand. If tomorrow you do not come, you will prove that you cannot be trusted. Not by me, by you. And a warrior who cannot trust himself is already defeated." The words sank into Riku's bones. He bowed deeply. "I won't fail." Hayato's face remained calm. "We will see," he said. "Weakness doesn't die because you make a promise. It dies when you prove, again and again, that your decisions are stronger than your feelings." As Riku stepped out of the dojo into the cold night air, the wind cut across his face. The mountain loomed above, silent and dark. He thought about all the times he had said, "Tomorrow I'll change." All the times he had promised himself, then quietly broken it when no one was watching. Maybe this time would be the same. But as he walked down the path, one thought would not leave him. A samurai never breaks a decision made in clarity. For the first time in his life, Riku felt something heavier than fear resting on his shoulders. Responsibility. Not to his father, not to the crowd, to the man he had just declared he would become. And the real battle, the one that would decide whether his weakness lived or died, would begin long before sunrise. Riku woke before his eyes opened. For a moment he didn't know why, until the cold reality rushed back. "I have decided." Those 3 words sat heavy in his chest like a stone. Outside, the mountain wind howled. The thin paper walls of his small room fluttered with every gust. He didn't need to check the sky to know it was still pitch black. His body whispered, "Stay in bed. It's too early. You barely slept. You can train later." The same old voice. Familiar, comforting, deadly. Riku sat up anyway. The floorboards were freezing. His hands instinctively went to the blanket again, but he stopped himself. "No." His own voice surprised him. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was final. He stood, tied up his hair, slung his training bag over his shoulder, and stepped outside. The air hit him like ice water. His breath turned to mist instantly. The sky was still a deep navy. Not a sliver of sunlight anywhere. Riku hesitated. His mind began negotiating again. Maybe Master Hayato won't know if I'm a little late. Maybe I could start tomorrow instead and still count it. Maybe I should warm up first inside. He clenched his jaw. No renegotiation, he whispered. I decided in clarity. He walked toward the path leading to the shrine. As he climbed the first slope, the world was silent except for the crunch of gravel under his feet. The trees on either side of the path swayed like dark giants. The cold bit into his skin deeper with every breath. Halfway up the slope, his legs burned. His lungs ached. His inner voice returned. Slow down. No one is here to see you. You already proved something by showing up. You can stop now. Turn around. Try again another day. Riku didn't slow down. He didn't speed up either. He kept the same, steady pace. Not because it felt good, but because it felt impossible. At the steep bend before the halfway mark, he slipped, knee slamming into the dirt. Pain shot up his leg. He gasped, palm scraping the ground. For a moment, he stayed there on all fours, breathless. Just quit. You are injured. Master Hayato will understand. No one would expect you to continue. He stared at the dirt beneath him and remembered the old man's words. A warrior who breaks his own decision teaches the world that his feelings are stronger than his will. Slowly, painfully, Riku pushed himself up. His knee throbbed with every step, but the pain felt clean, honest, simpler than the pain of shame he carried from the duel. The sky began turning faintly gray by the time he reached the old shrine at the top of the mountain. It was quiet, abandoned. The stone fox statues were cracked, moss climbing up their sides. The offering box was empty. The torii gate leaned slightly, as if tied from decades of wind. Riku bowed to the shrine, not as a ritual, not as a prayer, but as a promise to himself. I didn't break. The words fogged the cold air in front of him. For the first time, he felt a flicker of pride, not the kind he used to feel when someone praised him. This was something internal, wordless, hard-earned. He turned back down the mountain. By the time he reached the dojo, the sun was barely rising. Pale gold light washed across the floorboards. Master Hayato stood in the center, arms folded, expression unreadable. You came, the old man said. Riku's clothes were soaked with sweat. Dirt covered his knee. His breathing was uneven. Yes, Riku said. I decided. Hayato looked him over carefully. Did you consider quitting? Riku nodded. Many times. Did you renegotiate? No. A very small smile tugged at the corner of Hayato's mouth. Good. Today you have earned the right to train. Riku frowned. Earned. Hayato stepped closer. Training begins only after you win your first battle. What battle? Hayato placed a hand on Riku's chest. This one. Riku inhaled sharply. Most men, Hayato said, live their entire lives losing to the voice inside them. They do not need enemies. They are defeated long before they meet one. He walked toward the rack of wooden swords. Your weakness is not hesitation, Riku. It is negotiation. Today, you broke that habit. Riku stood a little straighter. The master tossed him a wooden sword. Riku caught it firmly. Now, Hayato said, I will teach you the second part of the rule. Riku's pulse quickened. There is more. Of course. Making a decision is only the first cut. The second cut is keeping it alive. Riku stepped forward. How do I do that? Hayato raised his sword into a ready stance. You repeat the action until your feelings surrender. Not once, not twice, but enough times that your body remembers the truth even when your mind forgets. Riku swallowed. And how many times is enough? Hayato answered with a strike, so fast Riku barely dodged it. The weak, Hayato said, asked for numbers. The strong asked for the next repetition. Riku gripped his sword tighter. I'm ready. Hayato's eyes gleamed. Then begin. The master attacked again, faster, sharper. Riku parried, misstepped, corrected himself. The wooden blades cracked against each other like breaking bamboo. Every mistake stung. Every strike echoed in his wrists. Every breath tasted like cold iron. But he didn't stop, didn't complain, didn't hesitate, because now one truth kept him anchored inside the storm of movement. I decided, and I do not break decisions. As the sun climbed higher, sweat dripped from Riku's chin. His arms trembled. His legs felt like clay. Finally, Hayato stepped back. Enough. Riku lowered his sword, chest heaving. Hayato walked closer, placing 2 fingers under Riku's chin, lifting it just slightly. You think this morning made you stronger, Hayato said. It didn't. Riku blinked, confused. Hayato tapped his forehead. It made you trust yourself. That is the foundation of strength. A man who trusts himself can learn anything. A man who doubts himself can master nothing. Riku felt those words settle into him like embers. Hayato stepped back. Tomorrow, he said, you will repeat the same run. And the next day. And the next. Riku nodded. And the training? He asked. That too. Your body will scream. Your mind will argue. But you will not renegotiate, because you have chosen the path. Riku bowed deeply. Yes, master. Hayato turned away, looking out into the morning light. Remember this, he said softly. Weakness does not die in a single victory. It dies from starvation. Every day that you refuse to feed it, it fades a little more. Riku closed his eyes. Tomorrow would hurt. The day after would hurt more. But somewhere deep inside, he felt an anchor drop, a weight that steadied him, not burdened him. He had obeyed his decision once. He could do it again. And for the first time, Riku felt the faintest spark of something he had never truly known. Strength, not the kind others saw, the kind that lived quietly inside a man who refused to lie to himself. Riku's legs were still trembling from yesterday's training when the morning bell of the dojo echoed across the courtyard. He stood at the entrance, gripping the wooden sword so tightly his knuckles whitened. He thought he was ready. He wasn't. Master Hayato stood in the center of the dojo, silent, still, unreadable as always. But today, something was different. There was a tension in the air, like a storm about to break. Riku bowed, breath steady. I'm ready to train, master. The old samurai didn't answer. Instead, he turned and pointed to 3 wooden buckets lined up near the wall. Carry them, he said. Riku walked toward them and immediately froze. They were filled to the brim with water, and each bucket looked impossibly heavy. Where do I carry them? Riku asked. Hayato pointed toward the steep staircase leading down the mountain, to the stone marker, then back. Riku swallowed. That meant almost a mile. Down and up. Master, with all 3. Hayato nodded, 1 in each hand, 1 balanced on your shoulder. Riku tried to hide the disbelief on his face. My arms are still sore from. Your arms are not the problem, Hayato interrupted. Your thoughts are... Riku bit his tongue, took a deep breath, then lifted the first bucket. His arms shook instantly. He lifted the second. His grip almost slipped. By the time he positioned the 3rd bucket on his shoulder, his entire body screamed. Go, Hayato said. Riku started walking. The weight felt impossible. Every step was a negotiation between effort and collapse. The water sloshed, threatening to spill with each movement. Halfway down the path, the familiar voice returned. This is too much. You don't have to prove anything. It's only training. Hayato won't know if you rest, just for a moment. Riku stopped walking, breathing hard, shaking. He knew this voice too well. Yesterday he thought he had defeated it. He was wrong. It was patient. It was subtle. It waited for the perfect moment to strike, when he was tired, hurting, alone. Riku closed his eyes. No renegotiation. He whispered the words like a charm against a demon, and he kept walking. By the time he reached the stone marker, his arms were numb. His fingers throbbed. His shoulder felt like fire. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He set the buckets down gently. His body begged him to collapse. He didn't. He knelt, took 5 deep breaths, and stood again, then picked up the buckets for the return climb. This time, The voice didn't whisper excuses. It screamed them. You idiot. This doesn't matter. You're hurting yourself. This isn't discipline. This is torture. Put the buckets down. Rest just a little. Riku clenched his teeth. He walked and walked and walked. The mountain slope burned his legs. His shoulders shook uncontrollably. Each step was agony. Near the final stretch, his foot slipped on loose gravel. He stumbled, knees hitting the dirt. One bucket fell, rolling down the path. Water spilled everywhere. Riku stared at the fallen bucket, defeated. Start over tomorrow, the voice said. This day is ruined. Riku's chest tightened. His throat burned. For a split second, he believed it. Then he frowned. Why? Why did that voice sound so familiar? He lifted the remaining buckets, set them on the ground, stood straight, and let the truth hit him. This voice is not my enemy. It's my old self. The weaker version of me that refuses to die. Something inside him ignited. He jogged down the slope, ignoring the pain, retrieved the bucket, filled it again from a nearby stream, balanced it perfectly, and began to climb back up. No excuses. No breaks. No negotiation. When he reached the dojo courtyard, he collapsed to his knees, the bucket thudding to the ground. Hayato stepped forward, studying him. Did you spill? Riku shook his head. Did you stop? No. Did you renegotiate? Riku's voice was barely a whisper. No, master. Hayato nodded once, a gesture so small, so subtle, but so meaningful that Riku felt pride bloom in his chest. The old samurai said, Today, you discovered the true enemy. Riku looked up, confused. Pain. Fatigue. Fei. Hayato shook his head. No. The voice inside you that pretends to protect you, but exists only to keep you weak. Riku felt chills run through him. Hayato continued. When you ignore that voice, you grow. When you obey it, you remain exactly who you are. He knelt beside Riku. The world cannot defeat you. Other warriors cannot defeat you. The only opponent who defeats a man is the man he refuses to stop being. Riku swallowed hard. Master, how do I kill that voice? Hayato answered instantly. You don't kill it. You starve it. He tapped Riku's chest gently. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, the voice becomes smaller. Every time you choose strength over excuses, it becomes quieter. Every day you refuse to renegotiate, the old you dies a little more. Riku closed his eyes. Something inside him shifted, quietly, deeply, permanently. Hayato stood and offered his hand. Come, today's training is not finished. Riku blinked, exhausted. There's more. Hayato smirked. Yes, because weakness is stubborn, and today we will make it surrender. Riku pushed himself up, gripping Hayato's hand. His legs trembled, his shoulders burned, but he felt stronger than he ever had. The floorboards of the dojo creaked softly as Riku stepped inside. His legs were still trembling from the bucket climb, but Hayato showed no sign of slowing the day's training. The old samurai walked to the center of the room and drew 2 wooden swords from the rack. One he handed to Riku. The other he held loosely, almost casually. But Riku knew better. When Hayato held a weapon, even the air seemed to go silent. Riku assumed they would spar. He was wrong. Hayato tossed a small hourglass onto the floor. The sand inside shimmered like ground pearl. You will hold your stance, Hayato said, until the last grain falls. Riku exhaled. This was not a spar. This was endurance. What stance? Riku asked. Hayato stepped back, lowered his body, and demonstrated. Deep horse stance. Back straight. Sword extended forward. Knees bent so low the thighs trembled instantly. A stance meant to burn muscles to the edge of collapse. Riku swallowed. Master, this is... Your weakness will crumble today, Hayato said sharply. If you allow it. Riku stepped into position. Hayato flipped the hourglass. The sand began to fall. Within 10 seconds, Riku's legs ignited with fire. By 20 seconds, sweat was dripping from his chin. By 30 seconds, his thighs shook uncontrollably. His mind panicked. This is insane. It's impossible. My legs will give out. Hayato paced in a slow circle around him. Listen to your mind, Hayato said. It begs for escape. Riku's teeth clenched. His knees buckled slightly. He forced them back into place. Hayato's voice cut sharply through the pain. Hold. The room felt smaller. Hotter. Every heartbeat thudded in Riku's ears. His sword tip wavered. His arms quivered. His breathing became ragged. This is your breaking point, Hayato said. And every man has one. Riku felt tears sting the corners of his eyes, not from emotion, but from raw, overwhelming physical agony. I can't. Hayato's voice snapped like a whip. That is not your voice. That is weakness speaking through your throat. Riku felt something inside him crack. His muscles screamed. His vision blurred. But he held. 15 more seconds passed. The longest 15 seconds of his life. Hayato suddenly stepped in front of him. Riku, look at me. Riku lifted his head with difficulty. You think you are fighting your body, Hayato said. You are not. Your body is capable of far more than you believe. He leaned closer. You are fighting the moment your mind decides to quit. Riku blinked through sweat. But it hurt so much. Hayato straightened. Pain is not the enemy. Surrender is. The sand in the hourglass kept falling. A steady, merciless stream. Riku's legs nearly buckled again. This time he dropped several inches. Hayato slammed his wooden sword against Riku's. The crack echoed through the dojo. Up, he barked. Rise! Somehow, Riku didn't know how. He forced his body back up. The stance returned. Barely, but enough. His entire lower body throbbed like it was on fire. His arms trembled from the effort of holding the sword steady. His jaw hurt from clenching. But he didn't drop again. Not even once. Finally, the last grain of sand fell. Hayato flipped the hourglass over again. Riku's breath stopped. What are you? This was not the test, the old master said. This is... Riku's heart sank. He could barely feel his legs. He was dizzy. His arms felt like stone. And Hayato was asking him to do it again. The familiar voice returned instantly. Impossible. You have reached your limit. No one could do this twice. Hayato, reading his expression perfectly, said, That voice is afraid, which is why you must continue. Riku shook his head. Master, I truly can't. Hayato's next words hit him like a blade. Then weakness wins. Something inside Riku snapped. A deep, raw surge of defiance. Not at Hayato, at himself, at the version of him who always surrendered. Without another word, Riku lowered back into the stance. The second round began. This time, Riku didn't fight the pain. He welcomed it. Every burn, every tremor, every scream of muscle was a reminder. This is the moment weak men quit. This is the moment strong men are born. His legs shook violently. His sword nearly dipped twice. Once he even lost his breath and gasped for air. But he did not quit. For the first time, the voice of weakness sounded small, insignificant, fading. Hayato watched closely, eyes sharp. Riku felt something he hadn't expected. A cold calm beneath the fire. A stillness under the suffering. And for a moment, he wasn't fighting anything. He was simply enduring. The hourglass emptied. The last grain fell. Riku collapsed forward, catching himself with his hands before hitting the floor. He was shaking uncontrollably, breathing hard, drenched in sweat. Hayato knelt beside him. Riku, he said quietly, today you doubled your breaking point. He placed a hand on Riku's shoulder. And that is how a man eliminates weakness. Not by avoiding suffering, but by proving to himself that he can go farther than he believed. Riku closed his eyes. Pain flooded every inch of his body. But beneath it, he felt something new. A strange, quiet strength. Hayato stood. Rest now. Tomorrow, the real test begins. Riku lifted his head, breath shaky. The real test. Hayato nodded. Yes, because it is easy to be strong when you are alone. Tomorrow you will face the moment all warriors fear. He paused. Failure in front of others. Riku swallowed hard. The sun had barely risen, yet the dojo was already filled with students. Riku froze in the doorway. He had never seen this many people gathered at once. Old warriors, young trainees, travelers, villagers, all circled around the main floor, waiting, watching, whispering. He could feel the weight of every pair of eyes pressing down on him. Hayato stood in the center, silent as a stone lantern. Riku approached slowly. "Master, what is this?" Hayato's voice was low. "Your final test. The one every samurai feared more than death." Riku swallowed. His hands suddenly felt cold. "Today," Hayato continued, "you will face weakness where it is strongest." Riku waited, terrified. Hayato turned to him. In front of others. Riku's breath caught. He had expected pain. He had expected exhaustion. But this humiliation, this exposure, he wasn't ready. Not after so many failures in his life. Not after so many moments where he wished no one had been watching. Hayato raised a hand, silencing the room. "Riku," he said, loud enough for all to hear, "you must demonstrate the kata of the unbroken will." Riku felt his heart stop. It was the most complex form in the school. He had never completed it once without stumbling. A few students exchanged glances. Some whispered. One even smirked. Riku felt shame burn hot up his neck. He stepped forward, knees weak, hands trembling. Why this? Why today? Why in front of everyone? Hayato spoke quietly so only Riku heard. "You learn to endure pain. You learn to silence fear. You learn to recognize the voice of weakness." Then his voice hardened. "Now you must learn to bleed without running." Riku closed his eyes. He understood. This wasn't a test of perfection. It was a test of exposure. A test of whether he would crumble when others saw him falter. He opened his eyes and began. The first movements were smooth, controlled. He flowed from one strike to the next, letting breath guide motion. For a moment, he felt calm. But as he moved into the fifth form, his weakest one, his foot slipped, only a little, barely noticeable. But the whispers erupted instantly. He stumbled. I knew he wasn't ready. A true warrior wouldn't make mistakes. Riku's stomach twisted. His chest tightened. His throat closed. That old, familiar voice returned. "You're embarrassing yourself. Everyone sees your failure. Stop now. End it." For a heartbeat, he wanted to quit, to walk off the floor, to escape the eyes. But then, he saw Hayato watching him, not disappointed, not angry, just observing, calm, steady, waiting to see which man Riku would be. Riku forced a breath through trembling lips. Slow, deep, deliberate. He continued. Another step, another strike, another transition. Then, another mistake, a bigger one. Gasps echoed. Someone chuckled. Riku's chest collapsed inward. His vision blurred. Shame flooded him like poison. Hayato stepped forward. "Riku." The young warrior looked up, humiliated. Hayato said only 4 words. "Finish what you started." Riku felt something shift inside him. A trembling flame steadying. A fractured blade reforging. He lifted the sword, straightened his back, and moved again. This time, he didn't aim to impress. He didn't aim to be perfect. He didn't aim to prove anything. He simply refused to quit. Mistake. Correction. Another mistake. Another correction. Again. And again. And again. The whispers gradually faded. The chuckles stopped. They were watching something else now. Not perfection, but a man who would not break. By the final movement, Riku's arms were shaking violently. But his eyes were calm. He slammed the wooden blade down in the final stance. Breathing hard, sweat dripping, legs trembling. Silence filled the room. Then Hayato walked beside him. He placed a hand on Riku's back and raised his other hand toward the audience. "Behold," he announced, "the warrior who understands a rule." Riku looked up, confused. Hayato continued. "The rule every samurai used to eliminate weakness forever is simple." He paused, then spoke clearly. A warrior is not defined by flawless execution, but by relentless continuation. Hayato turned to Riku. Your weakness was never failure. Your weakness was your belief that failure meant you should stop. He stepped closer. Today you didn't stop, and that is the day weakness died. For the first time in his life, Riku felt no shame, no trembling, no fear of eyes on him, only a quiet, powerful certainty. He bowed deeply to Hayato, and the entire dojo bowed back, not because he was perfect, but because he simply would not break.